The morning started like any other. Coffee, the newspaper, the familiar creak of the floorboards as I walked to the kitchen. I remember thinking how much I loved that sound, how it was a part of the house's history, my history. I even made a mental note to oil that one spot, the one right outside the pantry door. Small things, that's what filled my days, small, comforting things. Then the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I was halfway through an article about the upcoming harvest, something I'd been looking forward to for months. But it was her number, and I always answered. Hey, I said, expecting the usual, running late, or did you pick up the dry cleaning? Instead, there was this silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that makes your stomach drop. There's something I need to tell you, she finally said. Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion I recognized. It was like talking to a stranger. That should have been my first clue, shouldn't it? That something was profoundly, irrevocably wrong. Okay, I managed, my voice suddenly tight. I put the newspaper down, the rustling sound echoing in the sudden quiet of the house. I remember the smell of the ink, that sharp, distinct smell, and how it seemed to amplify the strangeness of the moment. I sold the farmhouse, she said. The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Sold? The farmhouse? I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. My head swam. I blinked, trying to process the information, but it was like trying to catch smoke. It just slipped through my fingers. What? I finally croaked, the word barely audible. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, a dull, insistent thrumming. I must have misheard. That had to be it. You heard me, she said, still with that same chilling detachment. I sold it. But how? The question screamed in my head, but I couldn't get it past the lump in my throat. The farmhouse wasn't just a house, it was the house. Generations of my family had lived there. My grandfather built part of it with his own hands. It was everything. I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking now. How could you? Why? There was a pause, a long, agonizing pause. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background, a sound that had always been so familiar, so comforting, but now felt alien, mocking. I needed the money, she said, her voice still flat. It was necessary. Necessary? For what? What could possibly be so necessary that it justified selling our home? My home. The home I thought we shared. The home I thought we'd grow old in. I felt a coldness spreading through me, starting in my stomach and radiating outwards, freezing me from the inside out. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the way she said them, the complete lack of remorse, of any hint of understanding of what she'd done. It was like she was talking about selling a car, not a piece of my soul. I wanted to scream, to yell, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed, trapped in a bubble of disbelief and rising nausea. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a nightmare. Any moment, I'd wake up and everything would be normal again. But the phone was still in my hand, her voice still echoing in my ear, and the floor still felt like it was tilting beneath my feet. This wasn't a dream. This was real. And my world, as I knew it, was crumbling around me. The phone call ended, but the ringing in my ears didn't. I stood there frozen, the phone still clutched in my hand. What did I do? What did any of this mean? I had to know. I had to understand. My first instinct was to call her back, to demand answers, but something held me back. A gut feeling, a sense that I wouldn't get the truth, not yet. So, I did the opposite. I hung up. I needed to think. I needed to figure out how to approach this, how to unravel it. I started with the obvious. I checked my emails. Maybe there was something there, some clue, some hint that I had missed. I scrolled through weeks, months even, of messages, bills, family updates, the usual everyday stuff. Nothing. It was like she'd lived a completely separate life, a life I knew nothing about. Then I remembered the bank statements. We had a joint account, but I usually just glanced at the totals. I never really paid attention to the details. Big mistake, clearly. I logged in, my hands shaking slightly. The numbers swam before my eyes. And then I saw it. A large withdrawal, a transfer labeled property sale. The amount, it was a fraction of what the farmhouse was worth. A fraction. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just selling the house, this was something else, something worse. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I ran to the sink, the cold porcelain pressing against my forehead. I splashed water on my face, trying to clear my head, but the image of that transaction wouldn't go away. Who was this money for? Where did it go? I thought about our conversations, our plans. We had talked about renovating the kitchen, maybe adding a sunroom. We had talked about the future, about growing old in that house, about our kids someday running through those fields. All lies, all a carefully constructed illusion. The questions kept swirling, each one more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Had she ever really loved me? Was our entire marriage a sham? I remembered the look on her face when we first bought the farmhouse, the way her eyes lit up, the way she ran through the rooms, imagining our lives there. Was that real? Or was she already planning this even then? I felt like I was losing my grip on everything I thought I knew. My world, my reality, was shifting, crumbling around me. I didn't recognize my wife anymore. I didn't recognize my life. I had to talk to someone. I couldn't keep this inside. But who? Who could I trust? My friends, my family. They all knew her. They all liked her. How could I explain this? How could I even begin to explain that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had betrayed me in such a profound and devastating way? I was alone. Utterly, completely alone. And the worst part was I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. The worst was yet to come. The aloneness was a heavy thing, a weight pressing down on me. I wandered through the house, needing to move, needing to do something. My feet took me to the study, the room where my grandfather kept his records, where I used to spend hours poring over old maps and deeds. The farmhouse. It kept coming back to that. It wasn't just bricks and wood. It was history, my history. My grandfather built part of it himself after he came back from the war. He'd lost so much, and that house, that land, was his way of rebuilding, of planting roots again. He passed that story down to me, along with the house itself. I remembered him showing me the old oak beams, the ones still marked with the axe strokes from when they were first cut. He'd tell me about the men who built it, their lives, their dreams. It wasn't just a house, it was a living thing, a testament to resilience and hope. And then there were the memories, my childhood summers, running through the fields, the smell of hay and wildflowers, family gatherings, laughter echoing through the rooms, the warmth of the fireplace on cold winter nights. It was the backdrop to my life, the constant in a world that was always changing. Even the renovations I'd done felt personal. Every nail I hammered, every board I replaced was a way of connecting with that history, of preserving it for the future. It was my way of saying, I'm here, I belong here, this is where I come from. I sat down at my grandfather's old desk, the smooth, worn wood cool beneath my hands. I pulled open a drawer, the familiar scent of old paper and leather filling my nostrils. Inside I found the original deed, the one with his signature, his careful, elegant script. It was more than just a legal document. It was a connection to him, to the past. And then there were the numbers. I knew roughly what the farmhouse was worth, appraisals, insurance, the general market value, but I'd never really thought about it in terms of money. It was priceless, but the amount on that bank statement, it was a fraction, a small fraction. It didn't make sense. It was as if she'd sold it for nothing, for a pittance. My mind raced. Why? Why would she do that? Was she that desperate for money? Had we been in financial trouble without me knowing? But that didn't make sense. We were comfortable, we had plans, we were building a future. Or so I thought. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about money. Not entirely. It was about something else. It was about control, about disregard, about treating something that was sacred to me, something that represented my past and my future, as if it were nothing more than a commodity, a bargaining chip. That's what hurt the most. Not the money, not the loss of the house itself, but the complete and utter disregard for what it meant. It was like she was erasing me, erasing my history, erasing my identity, and that's when a new feeling started to creep in, a cold, hard feeling, underneath the hurt and the confusion. a feeling that went beyond betrayal, a feeling that demanded answers, that feeling, that cold, hard feeling, wouldn't leave. It settled in my bones, replacing the hurt with a strange, focused determination. I had to know why. It wasn't enough to know what she'd done. I needed to understand the why. I started retracing our steps, our conversations, the past few months, trying to find any clue, any sign that I'd missed. Were there changes in her behavior? Had she been distant? Had she been lying? The memories played back in my head like a movie, but this time I was watching for the hidden details, the subtle shifts. I remembered her spending more time on her phone, always texting, always smiling, but never explaining who she was talking to. I remembered her late nights, supposedly at work, but I never called to check. I trusted her, I thought I knew her. And then there were the little things, the things I dismissed as just her being her. The new clothes, the expensive jewelry I hadn't bought her, the sudden interest in things she'd never cared about before. It all started to add up, to form a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. I thought about our friends. Had they noticed anything? Did they know something I didn't? The idea of them knowing, of them watching me while I was completely oblivious, made my stomach churn. I considered calling her friends, but something held me back. I wasn't ready to expose myself, not yet. I needed more information. I needed to be sure. I decided to go back to the bank. I needed to see the details of that transaction, the account it went to, any information that could lead me to the truth. The thought of confronting the bank manager, of explaining this whole mess, filled me with dread. But I had to do it. The bank was cold and sterile, a place of numbers and transactions, a stark contrast to the warmth and history of the farmhouse. I felt out of place, a stranger in my own life. The bank manager was polite but hesitant. Privacy laws, regulations, the usual bureaucratic hurdles. I had to push, to insist, to explain, without revealing too much the situation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he agreed to show me the details, with the proper authorization. And that's when I saw it. The money hadn't gone to a random account. It had gone to a business account, a newly formed company, and the name on the account, it was a name I recognized, a name that made my blood run cold. It was his name. The pieces started to fall into place, slowly, painfully, revealing a picture of betrayal that was far more complex and devastating than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about the house, it was about him. And it was about a level of deception that shook me to my core. I left the bank, the truth hitting me like a physical blow. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in was shattered. But amidst the pain and the confusion, there was also a flicker of something else, a spark of understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a glimpse into the why. And that glimpse, as painful as it was, gave me a new sense of purpose. I knew what I had to do, the name on that account. It kept flashing in my mind, a neon sign in the darkness. It was Mark's. Mark, my best friend, or I thought he was. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but they formed a picture I didn't want to believe. I remembered all the times Mark had been around, the dinners, the weekend trips, the casual conversations. He'd always seemed so supportive, so understanding. He'd even offered advice about my relationship with her, advice I'd taken to heart. How could he? How could he do this to me? I felt a wave of anger, hotter and more intense than anything I'd felt before. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was a double betrayal, a knife twisting in my back from both sides. The people I trusted most had this. But amidst the anger, a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered a question. Why? Why would they do this? It didn't make sense. Mark had his own successful career. He didn't need the money. And she had access to our shared resources. Why go through all this elaborate deception? I went back to the bank statements, staring at the transaction details. There was something off about it. The amount was large, but it wasn't the full value of the farmhouse, and the timing, it was too soon, too rushed. Then I saw it, a small notation almost hidden in the fine print. Partial payment. Partial? What did that mean? Why would someone make a partial payment for a house? It didn't make any sense. I called the bank again, my voice trembling slightly. I spoke to a different person this time, someone who seemed more willing to help. I explained the situation carefully, choosing my words. I asked about the partial payment, what it meant, what it implied. The bank employee explained that partial payments were rare for property sales. They usually indicated some kind of agreement, an agreement that wasn't a full sale. My mind raced. What kind of agreement? I asked for more details about the company the money had been transferred to. I needed to know everything. The employee was hesitant again, but I insisted, explaining the potential fraud involved. Finally, they revealed that the company was a newly formed real estate development firm, and the address listed for the company, it was an old office building, a place that was scheduled for demolition. Demolition? My heart skipped a beat. It didn't make any sense. Why would someone buy a farmhouse to transfer its value to a company that was about to be demolished? And then it hit me. The one thing, the thing they had overlooked, the deed, the original deed to the farmhouse, my grandfather's deed, the one I had found in the study. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was proof of ownership, and it was still in my possession. A wave of relief washed over me, mixed with a surge of adrenaline. They thought they had everything. They thought they had outsmarted me, but they were wrong. They had made a mistake, a big one. The farmhouse wasn't legally sold. It was still mine. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. I took a deep breath, trying to control the mix of anger and adrenaline surging through me. I needed to stay calm to get the truth. "Hello?" she answered, her voice sounding almost normal, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just turned my life upside down. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low and steady. "Now." There was a pause. "About what?" she asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into her tone. "About the farmhouse," I said, the word hanging in the air between us. "About the sale, and about Mark." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear her breathing, shallow and rapid. I knew she knew I knew. "Where are you?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm at the lawyer's office," I said. "We need to meet here, now." I hung up before she could answer. I needed to see her face, to see her reaction when I confronted her with the truth. I needed to know why. The wait was agonizing. Every minute felt like an hour. I paced the room, my mind racing, replaying our conversations, our memories, trying to make sense of it all. Finally, she arrived. She looked different, pale, nervous, her eyes darting around the room. Mark was with her, standing behind her, his face a mask of defiance. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I know about the sale," I said, my voice firm. "I know about the partial payment, and I know the money went to Mark's company." Her eyes widened. I can explain," she stammered. "Explain what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Explain how you could sell our home, my home, without even talking to me. Explain how you could lie to my face for months. Explain how you could involve Mark, my best friend, in this betrayal." She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. Mark stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "It wasn't like that," he said, his voice hard. "It was a business deal, a good opportunity." "A good opportunity?" I scoffed. "You stole from me. You used my home, my family's legacy, to fund your scheme." "It wasn't stealing," Mark insisted, his voice rising. "It was an investment, a temporary arrangement." "A temporary arrangement that involved selling my house behind my back?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "An arrangement that you conveniently forgot to mention to me?" She finally looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I needed the money," she said, her voice breaking. "Mark needed the money. His company was struggling. I thought I could help him." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice filled with pain. "What about us? What about everything we built together? Didn't that matter?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. I thought I could fix it. I thought you'd never find out." "You thought I'd never find out?" I repeated, my voice incredulous. "You sold my home. How could you think I wouldn't find out?" The truth was out. The lies, the deception, the betrayal. It was all laid bare, raw, and painful. And the worst part was I still didn't understand. How could the people I loved, the people I trusted most, do this to me? The lawyer's office felt heavy, the silence after the outburst thick with unspoken words. I needed to get out of there, to breathe. I walked out, leaving them to their explanations, their justifications. I couldn't listen anymore. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember the roads, the other cars. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Disappointment mostly, a deep, aching disappointment. I kept replaying her words, her reasons. She needed the money. Mark needed the money. But what about me? What about us? It felt like I was the last person she considered. When I got back to the house, it felt different, empty somehow. Even though all our things were still there, it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage set, a reminder of a life that wasn't real. I wandered through the rooms, touching things, trying to find some sense of normalcy. The photos on the mantelpiece, the books on the shelves, the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, they all felt like relics of a past that was now tainted, broken. I thought about our friends, the people we used to spend time with. How would I face them now? What would I say? Would they know? Would they judge? The thought of explaining everything, of reliving the betrayal over and over again, made me want to disappear. And then there was school. How would I focus on my studies? How could I concentrate on anything when my whole world was falling apart? It felt like everything was changing, and I had no control over it. I spent the rest of the day in my room, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. The phone rang a few times, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. I just wanted to be alone, to process, to grieve. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about trust. It was about the feeling that someone you loved, someone you thought you knew, could do something so hurtful, so wrong. I kept thinking about the future, the plans we had made. All those dreams, all those hopes now seemed like distant memories, like something that would never happen. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and let everything fall apart. I had to figure out what to do, how to move forward, but I didn't know where to start. The weight of it all was crushing. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I was lost, confused, and utterly, completely heartbroken. The next morning I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The initial shock and grief were still there, but underneath, a new feeling was growing, determination. I couldn't let this define me. I had to take action. My first thought was to talk to someone, not just anyone, but someone who knew the law, someone who could help me understand my options. I remembered Mr. Evans, our neighbor. He was a lawyer, and he had always been kind and helpful. I decided to call him. It was hard to explain everything over the phone, but Mr. Evans listened patiently. He didn't judge, he didn't interrupt, he just listened, and when I was finished, he said, "Come to my office. We'll figure this out." His office was small and cluttered, but it felt safe, like a place where things could be sorted out. Mr. Evans sat behind his desk, his expression serious but reassuring. He asked me questions carefully about the farmhouse, about the sale, about everything I had discovered. I showed him the documents, the bank statements, the deed. He studied them carefully, his brow furrowed. When he was done, he looked at me and said, "This is complicated, but it's not hopeless." He explained the legal terms, the different options I had. He talked about contracts and property rights and what it would take to challenge the sale. It was a lot to take in, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. He also talked about the emotional side of things. He reminded me that it was okay to be angry, to be hurt, but that I also needed to take care of myself. He suggested talking to a counselor, someone who could help me process my feelings. I left his office with a mix of emotions, overwhelmed but also relieved. I had a plan, or at least the beginnings of one. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't alone. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I gathered more documents, made phone calls, and met with Mr. Evans again. We talked about what I wanted to achieve, not just to get the farmhouse back, but also to hold those responsible accountable for their actions. It was a strange feeling, this shift from victim to something else. I wasn't just reacting to what had happened. I was taking control. I was fighting back. I also started doing things for myself. I spent time with my friends, doing things we used to do. I started running again, something I had stopped doing when everything happened. I even started volunteering at the local animal shelter, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the time. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wanted to give up. But then I would remember the farmhouse, my grandfather's words, and the feeling of injustice, and I would keep going. I was learning that even in the darkest of times, there was still hope, and that sometimes the only way to heal is to fight for what you believe in. The legal process was slow, really slow. There were documents to file, meetings to attend, and a lot of waiting. It felt like time was stretching out, each day longer than the last. But Mr. Evans kept me updated, explaining each step, making sure I understood what was happening. In between the legal stuff, I tried to focus on other things. I spent more time at the animal shelter, helping out with the dogs and cats. It was good to be around animals, to feel their unconditional love and acceptance. It reminded me that even when people let you down, there were still good things in the world. I also started spending more time with my friends. We went to the movies, played video games, just hung out. It was good to laugh, to forget about everything for a while. They were there for me, supporting me in their own way, even if they didn't always know what to say. My family was also a huge support. My parents called often, checking in on me, offering words of encouragement. They reminded me that I was strong, that I would get through this. Their love and support meant the world to me. I even started writing in a journal. It helped me to get my thoughts and feelings out, to make sense of what I was going through. Some days I would write about the anger and hurt. Other days I would write about the good memories, the things I was grateful for. The farmhouse was always in the back of my mind. I would drive by it sometimes just to look at it. It still felt strange, wrong, but I knew that I was doing everything I could to get it back. The legal process took months. There were times when I felt discouraged, when I wondered if it was all worth it. But then I would remember my grandfather's words, his strength, and I would keep going. Finally, the day came when the judge made a decision. I was nervous, my heart pounding in my chest. Mr. Evans was there with me, his presence calming. The judge ruled in my favor. The sale was declared invalid, and the farmhouse was legally mine again. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, so strong it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't a complete victory. The damage had been done, but it was a start. It was a step towards healing, towards reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The road ahead was still long. There were still things to sort out, emotions to process, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. I knew that I would get through this, that I would rebuild my life, stronger and more resilient than before. The dust settled eventually. The legal stuff was mostly done, though there were still some loose ends to tie up. But the bigger work, the work on myself, that was ongoing. It's not like you just forget something like that, like it never happened. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I had learned, about what I had gone through. I thought about trust and how easily it can be broken. I thought about relationships and how important it is to be honest and open. I also thought about myself. I realized that maybe I hadn't been as present in the relationship as I could have been. Maybe I had taken things for granted. It wasn't an excuse for what happened, but it was something I needed to acknowledge. I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable, to feel pain, to ask for help. I had tried to be strong, to handle everything on my own, but I realized that it's okay to rely on others, to lean on your friends and family. I learned the importance of having a strong support system. My friends, my family, Mr. Evans, even the people at the animal shelter, they all played a part in helping me get through this. I'm so grateful for them. I also learned that healing takes time. There's no magic solution, no quick fix. It's a process with ups and downs, good days and bad days. But with each day, you get a little stronger, a little more resilient. The farmhouse, it's still there. It's mine again. But it's not the same. It will always be a reminder of what happened, of what I lost. But it's also a reminder of what I gained. I gained a deeper understanding of myself, of my own strength and resilience. I learned that I can handle more than I thought I could. I learned that I can survive even when it feels like my world is falling apart. I'm not sure what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully trust again. But I know that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to keep moving forward, keep learning, keep growing. This experience changed me. It changed the way I see the world, the way I interact with people, but it didn't break me. It made me stronger. And that's the most important lesson of all, that even in the face of betrayal and loss, you can find a way to heal, to rebuild, and to come out stronger on the other side. Like you can find your way back to yourself.